Millionaire CEO rejects every heiress but falls for a single mom mowing his lawn. They told her no man would ever love her, not with the scars, not with the weight, not with the child born from shame. They laughed when she gave birth alone, called her names no mother should hear, and he the father never knew. But fate doesn't forget. 5 years later, while mowing a stranger's lawn to keep the lights on, she heard it. "Mommy?" She turned, and there he was. A little boy with eyes like hers, and a man on the porch who'd spent his whole life refusing love. Until now, the boy who shouldn't know me. The sun was merciless that day, not cruel, but indifferent. It beat down on the blades of grass she trimmed, row by row, sweat dripping from her brow, the hume of the mower drowning out everything but her breath, and the sound of her daughter laughing somewhere nearby. Ella Monroe never looked up when she worked. She had learned that years ago, back when looking up meant seeing faces twist in disgust, or worse, pity. So she kept her eyes low, heart lower, and hands calloused from the only kind of love she trusted now: survival. At 23, she didn't dream of weddings or white dresses anymore. She dreamed of groceries that lasted the week, rent paid on time, her daughter's shoes not being one size too small. But today was different. Not because she was mowing the lawn of a billionaire, she'd done that before. The men with sleek cars and colder eyes didn't scare her. What frightened her was what she heard through the hum of the mower. A voice. Small, fragile, certain. "Mommy?" She froze. The machine coughed as she killed the engine. Sweat clung to her spine as she slowly turned. Her daughter, Lily, stood near the flower beds, watching a little boy no older than 5. He had soft brown hair, a red toy truck in hand, and eyes. Her eyes. He stepped closer, one hand lifted in her direction like a question. He tilted his head, studying her the way no child ever had. And then he said it again. "Mommy?" Ella's heart cracked in half. Before she could speak, a sharp voice cut through the air like a whip. "Zach, what did I tell you about wandering off?" A man came into view from the porch, dressed in tailored charcoal and a silence that could freeze the sun. His jawline looked carved from stone, his eyes like winter beautiful, dangerous and designed to keep people out. Ella's stomach dropped. Grayson Ward, CEO of Ward Enterprises, the man who reportedly hadn't smiled in 5 years, who never dated, never touched, never let anyone close, especially women. He was staring at her now. No, not at her, through her, as if trying to remember a ghost he couldn't name. Zach stood between them, eyes wide, caught in something none of them could see yet, something ancient, something bleeding through time. Grayson stepped forward, his voice low and tight. "You. Who are you?" Ella swallowed hard. Her voice tried to come, but her soul had already recognized the boy in front of her. The boy she'd been told was dead. The boy they said never made it. The boy she'd cried for until her body gave out from the loss. And yet here he was, alive, calling her mommy. The wind shifted, carrying with it 100 memories she'd buried, and one truth rising louder than them all: that they had stolen her son. Chapter 1. The boy who called me mommy. The grass still smelled of summer, sweet and damp and sun-warmed. Ella Monroe knelt near the edge of the hedge, clipping the last overgrown stalks with the kind of focus that had kept her alive all these years. Because control was all she had left. Lily was sitting under the willow tree a few feet away, drawing butterflies in the dirt with a stick, humming the melody of a lullaby she barely remembered from toddlerhood. That's when Ella heard it again. "Mommy?" Not Lily. She turned, not fast but slow, like her body already knew the moment was too fragile to meet head-on. And there he was again, the boy from earlier, the one with the toy truck and impossible eyes. She hadn't imagined it. He was real. Still staring, still calling her mommy. Her throat tightened. "Sweetheart," she said gently, standing, brushing dirt from her jeans. "I think you're confused." But his eyes didn't waver. He walked toward her, slow but certain. and as he stepped into the sunlight, her breath caught in her chest. The dimples, the curve of his chin, the way his left ear tilted just slightly. She knew this face. She had memorized it, in dreams, in grief, in that silent, broken hospital bed 5 years ago when they told her the baby was gone. That this was her son. Alive. And somehow, here. She knelt to his level, hands trembling. "What's your name, honey?" "Zach," he said. "Zach." She tried not to cry, tried not to let her knees buckle. Her own daughter looked on, confused, her little hands clutching a drawing. But before she could speak again, the porch door opened. A voice, colder than shade. "Zach." The boy froze, his small shoulders tensed. Then he turned around. Ella stood too, and faced him. Grayson Ward. Her stomach twisted in knots. Not because he was famous, but because he was him. The man from that night. The man they said was only a donor, a stranger. The man who unknowingly fathered her children. Grayson's eyes narrowed as he approached, his pace slow, precise. He looked at her like a puzzle that didn't make sense. "You're not from my staff. Who hired you?" "I worked for Yardworks. They sent me." He looked down at Zach, then back at her. "And my son just walked up and called you mommy." Ella swallowed. "Kids get confused sometimes." "No," Grayson said firmly. "Not Zach. He doesn't talk to anyone." His eyes sharpened. "He's barely said a full sentence since he turned 3. Not to his therapist. Not to me. Not even to his..." He stopped himself. "Not even to the woman he believes is his mother." Ella's pulse thundered in her ears. "Maybe it's nothing," she managed, stepping back, ready to run. "I'll just pack up and..." Forthwith, he stepped forward. "What's your name?" "Ella," she said. "Ellen Monroe." He looked stunned for half a second. Then it passed, replaced by something unreadable. "Ella," he repeated, like it tasted familiar. "Have we met before?" 9, she lied. But her hands were shaking. He turned to Zach. "Go inside, buddy. I'll be there soon." Zach hesitated. "But..." "Oh." The boy obeyed slowly, but not before he reached out, touched Ella's hand with his small, warm fingers, and whispered, "Don't leave." She nearly collapsed. When Zach disappeared inside, the silence between her and Grayson swelled. "You don't look like a landscaper," he said at last. "You don't look like someone who smiles." That surprised him, almost made his lip twitch. But then he studied her, too closely. "You know something," he said quietly, "and I'm going to find out what." He turned without another word, disappeared into his mansion, and left her standing there, the mower silent behind her, the world suddenly spinning. Lily tugged on her shirt. "Mommy, who was that boy?" Ella crouched and held her daughter tightly. "Someone very special," she whispered, pressing her cheek to Lily's hair. In her heart, she knew everything was about to change. Because the boy who called her mommy was hers. And the man who stole him, even if unknowingly, was the one man she never wanted to see again. Grayson Ward, Chapter 2, Terms of a Lie. Ella didn't sleep that night. She lay curled beside Lily in their tiny studio apartment above the mechanic's garage, listening to the radiator knock like a warning bell. Her daughter's breaths were soft, steady, the only rhythm that made sense anymore. But Ella's mind was a storm. Zach, his eyes, his voice, that single word. "Mommy." She pressed her fist to her lips to keep from crying again. How? How had they lied to her so completely? How had her son ended up in the home of Grayson Ward? She remembered the hospital, the endless silence after they wheeled her into surgery, the flat expression of the nurse who told her the baby hadn't made it, the hollow ache that followed her for years. But now she knew the truth. They hadn't buried her baby, but they'd stolen him. And the man whose name she'd tried to forget was raising him. Grayson Ward. Old, brilliant, powerful, untouchable, and the father of her children. Her phone buzzed just past dawn. To no number. She hesitated before answering. "Miss Monroe," came his voice, low, crisp, like ice cracking on stone. "You and I need to talk. Today, noon, Ward Estate." The line went dead. By the time Ella arrived, she was in her cleanest jeans and a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big. Lily was at school. Her stomach twisted as the gates opened and the sprawling mansion came into view again. She half expected security to grab her. But instead, she was ushered inside by a housekeeper and led to a sleek, glass-walled office. Grayson stood by the window, suit perfect, hands in his pockets. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "My son said 3 words to you. 3. That's more than he said to anyone in 2 years." Ella stayed quiet. He turned then, slowly. "Tell me why." "I don't know," she whispered. Maybe because I'm his mother." His face didn't flinch. Not even a breath. "I did some digging," he said. "Ella Monroe, born in Ohio, moved to New York 6 years ago. No college, worked 3 jobs, gave birth 5 years ago to a daughter named Lily. No known partner, no medical records of a second child." Her knees nearly gave out. "I erased everything," she murmured. He stepped closer. "Who are you really?" "I told you," she said, lifting her chin. "I'm Ella, and your son is mine." "It's impossible." "Is it?" Silence. He studied her face like he was trying to remember a dream he'd never had. Then he turned away again. "My company's stock dropped last quarter," he said suddenly. "Investors are nervous. Rumors about my son's condition are leaking. I need positive press. A stable image." Ella stared at him. "And you think I can help with that?" "I'm offering you a deal," he said flatly. "Live here, take care of Zach during evening hours, be visible, present, make it seem like he's improving under special care." What do I get?" 3 months, he said. "Food, shelter, a payment plan to erase the $100,000 0 debt my lawyers will say you owe." Her heart stopped. "I don't owe you anything." He finally met her gaze. "The camera footage from yesterday was leaked. My PR team spinning it as a rogue nanny who trespassed to get close to my son. If I press charges, that becomes your reality." "You're blackmailing me?" "I'm giving you a choice." Ella's hands clenched at her sides. "And what about my daughter?" "Stays with you. She'll have her own room." She turned toward the door, tears burning. "You don't care about Zach, you just want a good headline." He didn't stop her. "Be here by 8, or don't. But understand this. Zach asked for you, and he's never asked for anyone." She paused at the door. That was the knife. And the hand holding it. That night, Ella returned with a single suitcase, and Lily's small hand tucked in hers. The mansion was quiet. Zach waited in the doorway, his stuffed bear in his arms. He ran to her, no hesitation, no fear. She dropped to her knees and caught him. And in that moment, Grayson, watching from the top of the stairs, saw something he'd never seen in his own home. Warmth. Not from wealth, not from luxury, but from a mother's arms. Chapter 3. The Woman in the Rain. The rain began just after midnight. A slow, whispering kind of rain that sounded like memories tapping on the windows, soft, insistent, impossible to ignore. Ella sat by the window in the guest room, arms wrapped around her knees, watching the lights of the Ward estate blur behind streaks of water. Lily was asleep in the adjoining room, her stuffed bunny tucked under her chin. Zach, too, had drifted off earlier, his head in Ella's lap, his fingers curled into her sweatshirt as if they'd never been apart. But Ella couldn't sleep. Not in this house. Not under this roof, where everything felt beautiful and haunted. She reached into her bag and pulled out an old hospital bracelet. The white plastic was cracked and faded now, but the name still clung to it. Infant Monroe 2/15. They told her the baby hadn't survived. That the bleeding was too much, that by the time she woke up it was over. But no one ever let her see the body, no one let her hold him. And now, 5 years later, she was nursing a boy with her eyes, her voice, her heartbeat, inside the house of the man whose name had haunted every nightmare. Grayson Ward. She hadn't known who he was that night. Only that he was tall, tired, and kind for exactly 6 minutes in the hotel lobby, where she'd been crying after her roommate's betrayal. She barely remembered the drink, just the heat, the weight, and the cold bathroom tiles the next morning, when she realized she'd been drugged, used, forgotten, until the test turned pink, until everything changed. The bracelet slipped from her fingers. She pressed her forehead to the cold glass, trying to breathe, but the rain made it worse. It always did. Because rain was the last thing she remembered before she collapsed in the hospital, clutching her belly, screaming his name. That same night, across the estate, Grayson stood alone in his office, staring at the security footage on his laptop. He watched it for the third time, that moment Zach ran into Ella's arms. There was no hesitation, no fear. Zach had never done that, not with his therapists, not with Jasmine, not even with him. He should have been grateful. But instead, his chest tightened with something he didn't understand. Jealousy? No, that wasn't it. Longing. Grayson closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair. He hadn't told anyone, not even his board, about what happened 5 years ago. How he was approached discreetly by a private fertility clinic in Boston, how they promised confidentiality, quality donors, total anonymity. It was supposed to be a controlled process. But 2 weeks later, they told him a surrogate had miscarried, but that the embryo hadn't taken. He never followed up. He buried himself in mergers and silence. But now, a woman with no legal records, no medical history, and no access to his world was standing in his hallway, holding the child they claimed never existed. And his name was Zach. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out the folder Jasmine had left for him months ago. The one marked Zach's History. Inside, blank medical charts, a falsified birth certificate, no photos of Jasmine pregnant. He hadn't questioned it then. He'd been too lost in work, in grief over his father's death, too distracted to dig deeper. But now he knew. He'd been lied to. And he'd raised someone else's crime as his own son. Down the hall, Ella rose from the window. She couldn't stay still any longer. The rain pulled her, like it always had, toward answers she didn't want but couldn't ignore. She crept through the mansion's quiet halls, barefoot on marble, guided by instinct more than memory. At the far end of the east wing, a door stood ajar. Light glowed beneath it. Inside, she found a nursery. Painted clouds, a small train table, a shelf filled, and on the far wall, a photo, framed in silver. And Zach at 1 year old, in the arms of Jasmine. Ella stepped closer. Her hands shook. It was her son. And that woman, wearing designer silk and fake affection, had held him through every birthday, every cry, every fever. Ella didn't realize she was crying until her fingers brushed the glass and came away wet. Then she heard it. Behind her. "You're not supposed to be in here." She turned. Grayson stood in the doorway. Ella didn't move. "I had to see it," she whispered. "I had to know." He looked at her, no mask now, just a man standing in the ruins of the lie he helped build. "Zach is mine," she said, trembling, "and you raised him. While I was scraping together pennies to buy my daughter's shoes, you were rocking him to sleep in a house with 5 fireplaces." "I didn't know. Winthan changed what happened." "No," he said quietly. They stared at each other. Strangers. Parrot. Connected by a past neither one chose. "I didn't sign up for this," she said, her voice breaking. "Neither did I." That's his silence. Then he stepped into the room, past her, and picked up a toy Zach had left on the floor. Along with? He was 2, Grayson said. He got pneumonia, nearly died. I stayed by his side for 5 days straight. Didn't sleep. Ella watched him. He calls me Dad, he added softly. But I never really felt like one. Yeah. He turned to her. And now? I don't know. She took a breath. But what she said next surprised even her. I'm not here for revenge. I just want him to know I never gave him away. Grayson nodded, eyes unreadable. Good. Bye. Because I need to know that too. And for the first time, something shifted between them. Not trust, but understanding. Rain still fell outside, steady and slow. And somewhere down the hall, their son dreamed in silence. Chapter 4. Do you know who you hurt? The playground was too perfect. Colorful, padded, sanitized for comfort. But beneath the pastel-painted jungle gyms and spring-loaded horses, Ella could hear the sounds parents like Grayson Ward never noticed. The snickers, the whispers, the carefully camouflaged cruelty. She watched from the sidewalk, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding the storm in her eyes. Zach stood alone by the sandbox, silent, shoulders curled inward like he was trying to disappear. A little boy with a red hat had just whispered something to the others, and now they were circling Zach like wolves around a fawn. Ella's fists clenched. One boy kicked sand at Zach's shoes, another tugged at his sleeve. And Zach didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just stood there, quiet and crumbling, until a blur of color darted between them. Stop it, Lily screamed. She pushed the boy with the red hat so hard he stumbled into the plastic slide. Leave my brother alone. The teacher on duty, a woman in her 50s with a tight ponytail and a name badge that read, Miss Carmen, rushed forward. Hey, no pushing, she barked, pulling Lily aside. What's going on here? The boy pushed Zach, Lily cried. He called him dumb. The teacher's face pinched. She looked at Zach, who said nothing, then at Lily, then at Ella, who was already crossing the lot like a storm rolling in. I saw the whole thing, Ella said firmly. My daughter stood up for a child who couldn't defend himself. That boy was bullied. Ma'am, the teacher said, forcing a smile. We appreciate parental involvement, but... Don't, Ellen snapped, voice low but clear. Don't talk to me like I don't belong here. The principal arrived minutes later, young, overgelled, and already flustered. He gave the usual lines, children will be children, we'll speak to the parents. Thank you for bringing this to our... But when Grayson arrived in his navy 3-piece suit, cufflinks catching the sunlight, everything changed. The principal stood straighter. The teacher adjusted her ponytail. Even the other parents lowered their voices. Ella hated how quickly power shifted in the presence of money. Grayson looked down at Zach, then over at Ella. What happened? She told him. Nothing up. Zach flinched when the story hit the word dumb. His eyes filled, but he still didn't speak. Grayson's jaw tightened. Did he say that? Ella said, voice soft but sharp. And no one stopped him until a 5-year-old girl did. The principal stepped in. We'll handle it appropriately, Mr. Ward. These incidents are rare, and... You let a nonverbal child get harassed in plain sight, Grayson said. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. This isn't about rare. This is about failure. The silence was instant. Even the wind seemed to pause. He crouched in front of Zach, his voice quieter now. Did they hurt you, buddy? Zach didn't answer, but he leaned toward Ella and took her hand. That was the moment everything changed. Grayson saw it, and something inside him cracked. Later, back at the estate, Zach curled on the couch beside Ella, eating goldfish crackers, while Lily colored nearby. The sunlight poured through the windows, but the air in the house was different now. Thick with truth and the ache of regret. Grayson stood by the fireplace, watching them. Then he spoke. I never noticed, he said. Not really. I mean, I paid for specialists, tutors, the best speech pathologist in the city. Ella looked up. But you weren't in the room. He nodded slowly. I thought I was giving him what he needed. You gave him silence, she said, because that's what you knew. The words stung and landed. Grayson sat across from her, the distance between them as heavy as ever. What about you? He asked. What did they give you? Ella smiled bitterly. A hospital bed, a death certificate, a lie. He swallowed. I didn't know he was alive either. I know, she said softly. But you had him, and I had nothing. That silence stretched again. It wasn't cruel, it was reverent. The kind that followed confession. Then she said the words neither of them wanted to face. I called her mommy anymore. Grayson nodded once. He hasn't called her anything in months. I mean? Grayson's eyes met hers. He calls you mommy. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. Because in that moment, they both knew. Whatever had been stolen was finding its way home. Chapter 5. She smells like home. Zach had trouble sleeping that night. Ella heard him rustling around his bed shortly after midnight. At first, she stayed curled on the couch, hoping he'd drift off again. But then came the softest sound. Not crying, not quite, just a small whimper that felt like a tug on her soul. She didn't hesitate. She opened his door and stepped quietly inside. The room was dim, lit only by the soft blue glow of a nightlight shaped like the moon. Zach sat upright in bed, knees pulled to his chest, his stuffed bear clutched tightly. He didn't look up. Ella crossed the room and sat beside him. For a moment, she just breathed with him, matched the quiet rhythm of his fear. Then she whispered, "Bad dream?" He nodded. "Want to talk about it?" He shook his head. She reached out and touched his hair, soft, a little damp with sweat. "When I was your age," she said gently, "I used to be afraid of storms, even quiet ones." Zach said nothing, but his body leaned ever so slightly toward her. "Oh, you want me to stay?" Another nod. So she did. She lay beside him, one arm under his pillow, the other around his back. He didn't move at first, and then, slowly, he pressed his small face into her neck. His body melted against hers with a kind of surrender that could only come from recognition, not memory. Something deeper. Something cellular. He whispered something, then so faint she almost missed it. "You smell like home." Ella's breath caught. And she didn't cry. Not then. But later, when he was asleep, his fingers curled around hers like they had never let go in the first place. That's when the tears came. Quiet, trembling. Because somehow, even though the world had stolen 5 years from them, this boy still knew her. Not as the woman in the photograph, but as the mother in his bones. Across the hall, Grayson stood in his study, watching through a crack in Zach's door. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop. He'd gotten up to check a late email and noticed the hallway light on. Then he heard the whisper. "You smell like home." And in a way he never expected, it broke him. Because Grayson had spent years building empires, crafting silence, mastering control, all to protect a child he thought was his. And now that child had found home in someone else's arms. He turned away, walked back to his desk, and sat down heavily. The silence was too much. So he did something he hadn't done in years. He opened the drawer and pulled out the small, sealed envelope. The one he'd never dared read. "Plain Grayson, in case I don't make it." It was from his mother. She'd written it the day she went into her final surgery, 6 years ago. She hadn't survived. His fingers trembled as he opened it. "You're reading this, my darling son, then I'm gone. And I'm sorry I didn't say more when I could have. I was hard on you. You were always so strong, and I let myself believe you didn't need softness. But listen to me. Strength is not silence. Power is not distance. One day someone will come into your life and break all your walls. Let them. Let yourself be human again. Don't miss the miracle in front of you because you're too proud to believe you deserve it. Love. Real love. It finds you when you least expect it. Don't push it away. Grayson stared at the words until his vision blurred. Then, slowly, he folded the letter and placed it on top of his desk. Ella Monroe had stepped into his house like a breeze through a locked room, and she'd tamed the silence. And somehow, in a single night, she'd done something no one else had managed in 5 years. And she'd made Zach smile in his sleep. The next morning, Ella awoke in Zach's bed, his head still on her shoulder. She moved carefully, slipping out without waking him. In the hallway, she found Grayson waiting. He didn't say anything, just looked at her. For once, his expression wasn't cold. It wasn't guarded. It was something raw, something real. "Thank you," he said softly. "My what?" "Till being what he needs." Ella nodded. "He's not the only one." That caught him off guard. She smiled just faintly and started toward the kitchen. But before she turned the corner, he asked, "What do you need, Ella?" And she stopped. For a moment, the world stilled. Then she turned, met his eyes, and said, "To be believed." He didn't blink. "I'm working on it," he said. And somehow, she believed him. Not because he was powerful, but because, for once, he sounded human. Chapter 6. The Other Twin. The envelope was thin, unassuming, but Ella's fingers trembled as she opened it. She sat alone at the kitchen table, the morning light slicing through the blinds in pale gold slivers. Lily was at school. Zach was in his therapy session down the hall. Grayson was pacing upstairs, pretending he wasn't waiting. Inside the envelope, 3 pages. DNA results. 2 names. Zach Ward, Lily Monroe, and 1 truth. Full biological siblings. Fraternal twins. Ella dropped the papers. Her breath caught in her throat like a sob that didn't know how to escape. They hadn't just taken her son. They'd taken both her children and given only one back. For 5 years, Lily had whispered in sleep that she missed someone, cried over shadows she couldn't name, and all this time, her brother had been just 10 miles away, living behind gates and marble. She stood up slowly, gripping the edge of the table. The room spun. Then a voice spoke softly behind her. "I saw the results." She turned. Grayson stood in the doorway, tie loosened, sleeves rolled, a man undone. "It's real," he said. "They're twins." Ella nodded. No tears this time. Just the weight of something too heavy to cry over. "I didn't know," he said again. "I swear to you, I didn't know." "I believe you," she whispered. Grayson stepped closer, slowly, like she was glass. "Why, someone did," she said. "Someone wanted this, wanted to divide them, wanted you to race one and forget the other." Grayson closed his eyes. "Jasmine?" Ella's voice tightened. "Where is she?" "To Europe, allegedly." The silence between them was laced with fury and pain. Then Ella said what neither had dared speak until now. "She lied to both of us. She stole my son. She forged documents, faked a miscarriage, and gave you a child that wasn't hers to give." Grayson's jaw clenched. "I trusted her." "I trusted the world," Ellen said bitterly, "and it let me bleed out in a hospital bed." A long pause. Then he whispered, "How do we fix this?" She shook her head. "You don't fix something like this. You feel it, you tell the truth, you face what's broken." To kids. Ella looked toward the hallway, where Zach's laughter rang faintly. "They'll lead us," she said. "We just have to follow." That night, they told the children. Ella sat with Lily on one side of the couch, Grayson with Zach on the other. Neither child spoke at first. Then Zach reached across the cushions and held Lily's hand. "I knew you smelled like me," he said quietly. Lily laughed through her tears. And you talk like me." Zach leaned his head on her shoulder. "So, you're really my sister?" Ella whispered, "You always were." Zach looked up at her, his voice trembling. "And you're really my mommy?" She nodded, tears finally falling. "I always was." He crawled into her lap and didn't let go for a long time. Across the room, Grayson watched silent, still, but not untouched. Later, after the kids were asleep, curled together like halves of a whole, Grayson found Ella on the back porch. The sky stretched out like an ink spill. The wind was cool. The world, for once, was quiet. "He's coming back," he said. "Jasmine?" He nodded. "I called her. Told her I knew everything. She's flying in tomorrow." Ella swallowed. "And then?" "I want her to face you." Ella turned. "That's not justice, Grayson. That's a confrontation. I want her to see what she tried to destroy. And I want her to realize she failed." Ella looked up at him. And for the first time, she didn't see a CEO. She saw a father, a man learning how to fight not with power but with truth. "I'm not afraid of her anymore," Ellen said. Grayson's voice softened. "Good, because this time, you won't be alone." And in that moment, under stars neither of them had noticed, for years they stood side by side. Two people who had lost everything, now holding what mattered most. Chapter 7. Kidnapped by the Past. The front gate buzzed at exactly 10:02 a.m. Grayson stood by the window, unmoving. Ella watched from the hallway, arms crossed, heart pounding, not from fear but fury. Jasmine stepped out of the black town car like she hadn't just disappeared for months. Designer sunglasses, crimson lips, a white dress too perfect for someone who had stolen 2 childhoods. She carried nothing, because women like her never needed bags, just backup plans. "Should have worn handcuffs," Ellen muttered. Grayson glanced at her. "She won't get far this time." The door opened. "Grayson?" Jasmine smiled, removing her sunglasses slowly. "You look—" "Don't," he said. She paused, blinking. "We're doing this already?" "You lie," he said coldly. "About the child, about the birth, about everything." Jasmine sighed, stepping inside like it was her house. "I did what was necessary." "No," Ella said from behind. "You did what was selfish." Jasmine turned. For a split second, her mask cracked. Then it reformed, smooth and smug. "Holly," she said sweetly. "The fat girl made it through the storm." Ella didn't flinch. "And you made it into my hospital room. You injected me, took my baby, lied to him, lied to me." "Because you didn't deserve him," Jasmine snapped. "You were a joke. You still are." Grayson stepped between them. "Where's the birth certificate?" he asked. "The one you faked." Jasmine's jaw clenched. "Gone." "The clinic confirmed," he continued. "The surrogate never miscarried. They just stopped reporting under your orders. You paid them off." Jasmine turned to him now, her eyes hard. "You think this woman loves you? You think she's not here for the money? She's been playing you since the day she stepped on your lawn." Grayson didn't blink. "She never knew. But you did. You knew everything. And still, you lied." "I love you," she screamed. Silence fell like glass shattering. Ella stared. Jasmine's shoulders heaved. Her lips trembled, not with regret, with rage. "I did everything to be enough for you," she spat. "I gave you a son. I raised him. I made you a family." "You took what wasn't yours," Grayson said. Jasmine's eyes turned to Ella. "Then let me take the rest." She moved fast. Too fast. Something flashed a syringe. Ella backed away. "What?" But Jasmine lunged. Grayson grabbed her, but she twisted, slipping from his grasp and running. Ella chased her. Through the hall. Past the stairs. Toward the garden. Then, "Mommy!" The scream stopped everything. "Ellie." Ella spun around, just in time to see Jasmine grab her. A knife glinted in Jasmine's hand, pressed against the small of Lily's back. Grayson froze. Zach stood at the top of the stairs, shaking. "Let her go," Ella whispered. Jasmine laughed unhinged now. "Let her go? After everything I've lost?" "You were never meant to have her," Ellen said. "I made this family." "You broke it. You broke it?" Tears streamed down Lily's cheeks. "Mommy." "Please," Zach whispered, shaking now. "Please don't hurt her." Jasmine blinked. It was the first time she'd heard him speak in months. He stepped forward. "She's my sister. You're not my mom." Jasmine stared. And then she crumbled. The knife clattered to the floor. She dropped to her knees, sobbing into her palms. Security rushed in. Grayson gave the nod. Jasmine was taken, handcuffed, screaming, broken. Zach ran to Lily and wrapped his arms around her. Ella dropped to her knees beside them, holding them both. Grayson knelt too, one hand on Zach's back, one on Ella's shoulder. And for a moment, they didn't speak. They just breathed. 3 heartbeats in the same rhythm. Family. Found. Safe. Later that evening, as the police car took Jasmine away, Grayson stood beside Ella in the driveway. "I should have seen it," he said. "She was very good at being exactly who you needed." Ella. He looked at her. "But you're the one I trust now." She didn't answer. Didn't need to. Because Zach came running and called them both. "Mommy, Daddy." And the world shifted. Not back to what it was, but into what it was always meant to be. Chapter 8. The fire didn't kill me. The flames had been real. That much Ella remembered. The choking heat, the smoke curling around her wrists as she tried to untie the ropes. The hiss of gasoline on old wood, and Jasmine's voice, shaking, unhinged, whispering, "You don't get to win." She hadn't known how long she was out, or what brought her back. Only that when her eyes opened in the hospital bed, Zach was asleep at her side. Lily's tiny hand wrapped around her thumb, and Grayson, still in his blood-stained shirt, sat in the corner, unmoving, unreadable. But when he saw her eyes open, something in him cracked. He stood and walked to her bedside. "You're awake." Her throat was raw, but her voice came anyway. "I'm still here." He reached out, touched her wrist gently. "You almost weren't." She looked away. "Almost doesn't count." There was a long silence. Then she whispered, "Where's Jasmine?" "In custody. They're charging her with attempted murder, arson, kidnapping. She won't hurt anyone again." Ella nodded, but her voice was softer now. "She almost took everything from me. Again." Grayson knelt beside the bed, his hands trembling. "She didn't," he said, "because this time, I came for you." Her eyes filled, not just from what he said, but from the fact that he meant it. The headlines hit by morning. Millionaires ex-arrested in attempted murder of child's biological mother. Ward Empire scandal, hidden surrogacy, stolen twins, and the woman who survived it all. Ella's photo, grainy, tired, and real, was everywhere. She turned off the TV. But the world didn't turn off with it. By noon, reporters were camped outside the hospital. Gossip sites were speculating on her weight, her scars, her worth. Talk shows debated whether she was a gold digger or a saint. If you wanted to scream. But instead, she closed her eyes and breathed. She had survived worse than public opinion. But she had survived fire. Grayson didn't leave her side. Not once. He canceled meetings, ignored investors, fired a PR firm that tried to draft a more favorable version of the story. Instead, he sat beside her bed and watched Lily braid Zach's hair, while Ella sipped lukewarm soup and pretended it didn't taste like paper. "You know," she said one evening, "you're not exactly the kind of man I thought would be holding my hand in a hospital." He smiled faintly. "And you're not the kind of woman I thought would save my son." Her voice lowered. "Do you regret it?" letting me in. Grayson reached for her hand. Ella, you didn't walk in. You broke through. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. Because for the first time since the day she gave birth, someone was choosing her, not for what she'd survived, not for what she could give, but for who she was. And that changed everything. The doctors released her a week later. Still sore, still stiff, but alive. Zach insisted on wheeling her out himself, his little hands tight on the wheelchair grips. Lily danced beside them, chattering about how they'd make the best welcome-home pancakes ever. Grayson held the door. And in that moment, with the wind soft on her cheeks and her children laughing in sunlight, Ella realized she wasn't a guest in this story anymore. She was the story. The woman who lived is not just through fire, but through abandonment, lies, loss, and still opened her heart again. Fire didn't kill her. It made her unstoppable. Chapter 9. I'm not a mistress, I'm the mother. The room shimmered with diamonds and cold laughter. Crystal glasses clinked, cameras flashed. It was the annual Ward Foundation Gala, an event drenched in power, curated for legacy. And Ella Monroe had no intention of coming, until she saw the article. Ward Heir's mother, a nanny turned mistress. Below the headline, a cropped photo of her at the hospital, face pale, dress wrinkled, Zach in her lap, and the caption, "She may have given birth, but she's no wife." Ella stared at it for a long time. Then she folded the magazine, walked into her room, and pulled out the only dress she owned that didn't smell like someone else's life. The valet didn't recognize her. Neither did the security guard at the door. But Grayson did. He was standing beneath the chandelier, halfway through a conversation with a senator, when he looked up and forgot what he... Ella. Hair pulled back, black dress, simple, sharp, no diamonds, no veil, just steel in her spine and the truth on her lips. And every step she took toward him was a warning. This woman doesn't hide anymore. Before he could reach her, someone else did. A woman in a navy gown with press credentials whispered, "Miss Monroe, do you have a moment? Some say you manipulated the Ward family, that you were never more than a live-in nanny who..." Ella turned. Her voice was clear, even, razor-sharp. "I'm not a mistress. I'm not a nanny. I'm not a mistake." She looked at the cameras now gathering, lenses aimed like weapons. "I'm the mother of his children, both of them, the daughter he never knew he had, the son who called me mommy before he called anyone else anything." The crowd stilled. A sea of silence, wide, electric. "5 years ago," she continued, "they told me my baby had died. They lied. They took my son and gave him to this empire." Now she looked straight at Grayson. And he didn't know either. Grayson stepped forward, took the mic from the host's hand without asking. He stood beside her now. No suit of armor. Just a man standing in the ruins of old power. "My name is Grayson Ward," he said, "and everything she just said is true." A gasp rippled. Grayson turned to Ella. "I spent my life building something I thought would make me untouchable, but it didn't save my son from being taken. It didn't save this woman from being erased." I paused. "It didn't save me from being a coward." Ella blinked, but that she didn't expect. "I let lawyers and lies raise my child. I watched a woman I trusted manipulate my world, and I said nothing, until she burned everything." His voice cracked. "This woman." He looked at Ella now, like she was the only light in the room. She walked into that fire, and walked back out. He reached for her hand. "Ella Monroe, you are not my mistake. You are my miracle." The room erupted, flashes, gasps, shouts. Adela didn't hear them. All she heard was Lily's voice from the corner whispering, "He said it," and Zach's, right behind her. Ella looked at Grayson, eyes wet. "I'm not ready to marry you," she said. His breath caught. "Okay. I am ready to come home." He smiled. Not like a CEO. Like a man who'd finally found what no boardroom could ever give. A family. A fight worth losing everything for. And a woman who stood in a black dress and told the world, "I'm not ashamed of how I survived. I'm proud of who I became." Chapter 10. The Ring and the Lawn. It wasn't a ballroom this time. It wasn't the press, or a gala, or a legacy dinner filled with whispers and silk. It was just a lawn. Even, damp from last night's rain, and Ella stood on it again, mower off, barefoot in the grass, 5 years from the day she first knelt here and heard a child call her mommy. The gate clicked behind her. She didn't turn. "I thought you hated getting your shoes wet," she said softly. Grayson's voice came behind her. "I brought different shoes." She smiled. "That's new." He stepped beside her, hands in his pockets, eyes on the same patch of sunlight breaking between the clouds. "This was the first place I saw you," he said. "Really saw you." Ella nodded. "You were furious, said your son didn't talk, like I was lying? I was scared. I was too—" A long silence. And then she said, "Why did you bring me out here?" He held out his hand. Small velvet box. She froze. But he didn't open it. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight," he said. "Or tomorrow. Or even this year." She turned to look at him, eyes steady, voice barely above a whisper. "Then why now?" "Because this is where you were when you saved my son. Where you saved me without knowing it. Where you stood under the weight of a world that tried to erase you and didn't flinch." He placed the box in her palm. "Because this ground, the same place they once made you kneel, should be the place where someone finally kneels for you." She stared at him. At the grass. At the moment. Then at the ring. Simple. Gold. No diamond. Just 2 interlocked circles, his and hers. Seamless. "I love you," he said. "Not because you gave me children, not because you forgave me, but because you are the first woman who ever made—" Tears traced down her cheeks. She looked down at the box, then slipped the ring onto her finger, not as an answer, but as a promise. "Someday," she whispered. Grayson smiled. "That's all I needed." They stood there in silence, the past finally soft behind them. And in the distance, Zach and Lily chased bubbles through the wind, their laughter rising like music over the lawn where everything began. The quiet place, where love came home. They never moved back into the city. Ella didn't want the marble floors, the 24-hour concierge, the skyline view that made you feel like the world belonged to someone else. She chose the little cottage on the east side of the estate, the one with ivy crawling up the brick, where the windows opened to sunrise and the grass grew uneven but honest. Grayson followed without protest. He traded boardrooms for bedtime stories. He learned to cook eggs that were always a little too runny. And every Sunday morning, he stood barefoot on that same lawn, mug in hand, watching the woman he loved hang laundry in the wind, her hair catching sunlight like it remembered how to be golden. Zach stopped whispering. He spoke now clearly, carefully in full sentences that often ended with "thank you." Lily started writing poems. She gave Ella one on her birthday that simply read, "You are what the stars wish they were." They still had hard days. Nights when the nightmares returned. Times when Ella would stare out the window and remember a hospital bed that should have been her last. But those moments didn't break her anymore. Because now, there was a hand reaching for hers. And it didn't shake. They married on the same lawn where she used to mow for strangers. There were no chandeliers, no reporters, no headlines. Just 2 kids holding flowers. And a man once cold, once unreachable, standing beneath a willow tree with his heart wide open. He cried when she walked toward him. Not because of the dress, but because she came back. Because after all the lies and loss and ruin, he still chose him. Not for his name, but for his soul. And she cried too. Because after years of being told she wasn't enough, wasn't wanted, wasn't worthy, here he was, in front of the whole world saying, "You are exactly what I spent my whole life looking for." Sometimes, love doesn't knock. It breaks down the door. Sometimes, it doesn't come with roses or rings. Just a little boy whispering "mommy" in the middle of a stranger's lawn. But love knows. Even when the world forgets. Even when time erases the trail. Love remembers its way home. Every time. If you're reading this, maybe you've been the girl who was told she was too much or not enough. Maybe the world broke you and you stitched yourself back together with silence. Maybe you've carried children or secrets or sorrow and thought no one would ever see the worth behind your survival. But hear this. You are not a mistake. You are not ruined. And no matter what they took from you, you are still allowed to love again. Fully, freely, without apology. Because real love doesn't care what you've been through. It only cares that you made it through. If this story touched something in you, stay for a moment. What does home mean to you now? What would you say to the version of yourself who almost gave up? You don't have to answer here. Just don't let the world silence your story. Someone out there is still waiting to hear it and know they're not alone. And if you feel like sharing, we're listening. It's with love, Ella, Grayson, Lily, and Zach.